Good morning, everybody. I welcome all councillors and members of the public to the latest meeting of the Northamptonshire Executive, including all those watching the meeting via the live stream on YouTube. Members are reminded to keep your microphones muted unless invited to speak. I would also know that many of our amazing staff watch these meetings on YouTube in their spare time later in the day or in the week. I wonder if I could take the opportunity to mention, as we are now on our 100th day of this administration, I recently wrote to all of our staff and gave them a summer update on some of the amazing achievements that we have made. Firstly, I was delighted to welcome Cornelia Anderkrot to the team, to our Executive Director of Children's Services. I know she's going to make an amazing difference, so thank you very much. The Council completed its first ever residents' satisfaction survey that measures perceptions across the Council's services, and we have had over 4,000 responses to the survey, which is amazing. We're also working very hard on our new corporate plan, and that resident satisfaction survey will help us on that. When the corporate plan is announced, there will be, as part of the process, there will be a public consultation, which we will launch in early September. Lastly, we have released in excess of 70 press releases since May, and that figure continues to increase. Our greatest achievements are the Gold Award for the National Armed Forces, reflecting this Council's commitment to those who put their life in danger to serve this country. The launch of the new family hubs in 2 of our local towns, there's more to follow, and a new cultural master plan which aims to bring together communities, organisation and creatives, which is something I know that everyone in this room today is really positive towards. So thank you very much for that and for allowing me to do that update. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you very much, Chair. We just have the 2. So we've got the Deputy Leader, Councillor Eddie MacDonald, and Assistant Chief Executive, Guy Holloway. Thank you very much. Thank
you very much for that. Agenda item 2, which are the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July. The minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July are set out on pages 5 to 20 of the agenda pack. Are there any comments in respect of their accuracy? Councillor Benimore.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 13 of the minutes, under item 832, it may seem a little bit pedantic, but under the quote attributed to myself, there's a letter missing from the word contacts. It should say contracts. So if that could be amended, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you for that. Yes, so with that amendment, can I have an approver for those minutes to be? So many to choose on. Councillor O'Hara, a seconder. Councillor Elizabeth Wright. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will therefore sign those minutes. Agenda item 3, members' declaration of interests. Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
Chair, I have a declaration of interest for item 8.
Thank you ever so much for that. Any other? Okay, we'll move on. So the notification of requests to address the meeting. We have received requests to speak on agenda items 5, 6, 8, 11 and 13. Speakers will be invited to address the Executive in turn at the appropriate point in accordance with Part 2, Paragraph 8.1.2 of the Constitution. Speakers are reminded that participation at Executive is limited to statements only which may be taken into account following officer presentation of the report and during member debate. So those details are down. So everybody happy? We'll move on to agenda item 5, By the way, people will notice that we are now putting our finance reports at the beginning of our meetings. I think that is really important. Finance is absolutely key to the success of this council, and I think it's important that we have them at the start of the meeting. So agenda item 5, the finance activity report. I would like to invite Councillor Jim Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you, Leader. And I confirm and reiterate your point about finance being at the beginning of the meeting. It is crucial, which is more or less what I'll speak about. The new overall corporate format is particularly easy to read and understand in relation to previous years' reporting. It provides a much more user-friendly analysis of our overall position and clearly enables a spotlight to be shone on the main areas of financial risk. Thank you to the executive and officer colleagues for creating this way of reporting our revenue and capital position, and I dare say in responding to comments made at corporate scrutiny. Page 33, the 3 key budget busting areas remain overspends that have been a part of budget reporting for over a decade, as you'll know, Leader. They are shown as adults and health partnerships and housing, place and economy, children and education. The commentary on pages 34 and 35, leading to the overview page on 36, shows a continuing stark outlook for local councils' finances nationally, with a period 3 forecast overspend of £9.4 million. But at least we're highlighting it, at least we're recognising it clearly. Page 40, the housing revenue account, a small variation, but is virtually balanced, which is clearly good. On page 41, we read, right to buy sales were 28 less than budgeted amount of 60 in 24-5. And yet later in that paragraph, we're again predicting 60 sales in 25-6, which given the wider national economic position for home owning appears to be optimistic. This will be something of interest for corporate scrutiny when scrutinising this and next year's budget. Further down the page, 41, we see that a saving of £210,000, I quote, which relates to lower staff costs due to vacant posts. Vacant posts may well give a windfall saving, but ultimately, if these posts are mission critical to the council's delivery of services, those services will not be delivered as promised. It also concerns me that where vacancies exist across the organisation, there is additional pressure on those colleagues who are in post and trying to cover the workload. I think we need to very much, certainly in corporate scrutiny and preparing the budget, to be more realistic about how we fill vacant posts and what we do to support those who should have colleagues working with them, but right now aren't. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much for those observations, Councillor Hakewell. I would now like to invite Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting. Lynn, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you very much. And firstly, before I start, I'd like to apologise for my non-attendance at the last meeting. I did send in apologies, but they weren't received in time, and I do apologise for that. So, on to today. Budget bombshell, 9.4 million overspend, general fund. A few weeks in, and you're almost looking at £1 million a week overspend when you're looking at how many weeks there are, which is quite concerning. 6.1 of that is children's services, 2.7 adults, care home placements, staffing shortages, 1.854 place and economy, school transport pressure, and nearly £1 million on enabling services. Savings delivery failure, only 69.6% of the savings are green, deliverable. 1.32 savings already marked red will not be achieved. High-risk home-to-school transport costs still uncontrolled, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Staffing crisis, high vacancy rates across key services, heavy reliance on agency interim staff, high costs, low stability, recruitment lag causing burnout and service fragility, and it's something that I feel very strongly on. Nearly 2 years on from the pay and grading, we still haven't got a workforce plan. Staff are leaving because of lots of pressures there. In terms of home-to-school transport, we had a look this week at my grandson going to school, and we've been quoted for him to go from Corby to Oundle of £1,750 a year, which is more than a household's council tax bill. It's unachievable for our residents. It's pressures, 40% pressures year on year at the moment for home-to-school transport. It's a crisis that you're facing in the future. Thank you very much.
And thank you for addressing the meeting. You are always most welcome to attend. I would now like to invite Claire Edwards, Executive Director for Finance, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So I welcome some of those observations, and as you'll see, this obviously being our Q1 activity report, is our first report that does try to combine our revenue, capital and treasury information. What we're trying to do here, as shown in Appendix A of this report, is to focus on what the key challenges, risks and achievements are, and to provide the building blocks in providing financial data that is in a more accessible format, and also providing financial information in a much more understandable context. In looking at what information we do have here, yes, obviously we are showing a Q1 forecast. I will reiterate it's a forecast, not an actual, in terms of a predicted overspend of £9.4 million for the General Fund. When we look at detailing, obviously, as we've alluded to in page 36 of those appendices, and obviously what we've tried to highlight is a very quick overview for those individuals scanning the document. So the key summary is from pages 4 to 24, where hopefully individuals can, and residents and members alike, can pick up the most important financial information. So we do have the RAG rating performance overview for the financial and capital data. Whilst we are obviously indicating some of those services that we do have significant demand challenges red, what we will see on slide on page 36, actually when we look at that in context, whilst from a financial point of view, we have focused on the financial envelope, the actual percentage of the budget that's changing is actually quite small, but the impact is quite large. So whilst we only have a 2.9% variance in our budget, we can start to see that those small variances make quite a large impact on our financial position. So what we will be doing, obviously we are giving this an opportunity to try and make sure that we are working through with those services in making sure that we do follow through in those mitigations. So we will continue to work with service areas to ensure that we pull down the financial envelope and work with mitigation plans across the rest of the financial year. What we have not assumed in here at all is the release of the contingency fund, which is just under £3 million. So we do have the contingency fund for exceptional expenditure that we cannot mitigate in the first instance through any other savings plans. Yes, looking at the Savings Act tracker, which hopefully we'll start to sort of build on this as we go through the financial year in terms of those that have actually been landed rather than on target. There are some areas which obviously automatically we are finding we're not able to deliver. This is a reflection that we are seeing right across local government in terms of the financial challenges that we do face, and some of those spending challenges that will automatically start to filter out, and quite rightly, as we said, as we move towards the budget, need to be considered in the medium-term financial plan. So what I would draw your attention to is obviously we have a really big summary going through this and some key highlights. Also for the HRAs, we said we do have an underspend of just under £1 million, but again, trying to ensure that positively we use all those fundings to provide decent homes and build new houses for the future. In terms of right to buys, you're quite right, we have seen a downward trend, but when we set the budget, that information was not sort of panning out that way, and based on our historical data, we have seen a very high erosion of our housing stock based on the right to buy sales in the past. So we are looking in terms of making sure that some of those vacancies, we do work quite closely with service areas, and there is a staffing panel set up to ensure that we promote and recruit and reduce agencies where we can. And looking at the capital, we also have a very significant capital programme. We are looking and working with service areas, as it says in here, to reprofile the capital programme. So we have a £122 million capital programme that we're for 25-26, but we're working with the service areas to reprofile that. So 28.9 million, which is an underspend at the moment, will be reprofiled into future years, and we will keep that under review as we start to go through this progress. So essentially, we'll also look at the capital programmes by service area as well. So once we start to delve down into each service area, you'll see that we've got all that financial information to hand for each service area if you choose to look at it. The HRA capital programme is quite significant as well, at 20.5 million, and we're looking to reprofile that and working with the service areas into future years and make sure it's more realistic and understand that we can get that better as we go into the budget setting process. Just also draw your attention finally to the Treasury position. So what we have here is quite a significant cash balance, and there's quite a lot of Treasury activity. So as at the end of June, we had a cash balance of 157 million, which we've been able to have and invest at 4.5%, which is higher than the England bank rate at the time of writing this report at 4.25%. As we'll see, when the England bank rates go down, it will obviously create some pressures, but obviously we're ensuring that the budget is reflective of that as we go through the year. Similarly, on the flip side, we do have significant borrowing. As this shows at the point of writing on the 30th of June, the PWLB, which is the Public Works Loans Body, which is accessible for local governments to borrow through the Treasury, is at 6%, and we have an average weighted borrowing rate of 3.22%. So I won't go through the rest of the document. There's lots of appendices in here that obviously gives you the breakdown of the capital programme in terms of each project for each service area. We also have information there in terms of the proposals that we're looking to reprofile the budget. And there's also significant information in terms of all the Treasury activity, in terms of all the prudential indicators that we have to publish, which is in Appendix F. So otherwise, I'm happy to pause there and take any questions, but move to the recommendations set out in Section 3 of the report, Chair.
Thank you for that, Claire. I would now like to invite a member debate from the floor, and we'll start with the mover, Councillor Graham Cheatley.
Morning, Chair. Whilst I note that we are forecasting a pressure in the Q1 finance activity dashboard for the General Fund, that needs to be acknowledged. This reflects the increasing financial challenges that local government is facing around social care for both adults and children, together with significant demand around SEND provision and home-to-school transport. It's a theme that we've obviously seen and had to accept over the last few years. I'm confident that the officers will continue to seek mitigations to provide efficiencies to offset in-year forecast overspends. However, I do acknowledge that there may be circumstances where the Council's contingency budget may be used to support unforeseen expenditure. I reiterate what Councillor Hakewell's already mentioned today. I believe this format of this report for Q1 is very different to previous formats, which I think could be difficult sometimes to read. This report presents the financial data in a format that I believe is easier to follow and understand, making it more accessible and transparent. This helps residents to understand what the risks, challenges and achievements are across the Council, highlighting and promoting the enormous amount of activities and work that is carried out on a daily basis by officers on behalf of our residents. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank our Section 151 officer and all her staff for their work in producing what I believe to be a much easier document to navigate. Chair, I'm happy to support the recommendations as set out in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Cheatley. I agree that in light of the financial report in Q1, it is important that we understand the challenging financial landscape that we are facing in local government, with increasing demand leading to funding shortfalls. In working with officers over the past few months, it is evident there is a significant amount of work undertaken to ensure that we can continue to deliver frontline services, but we need to ensure that this is done in a financially sustainable way to meet the challenges that local government face. I am therefore happy to second this report and thank Claire and her team for all their hard work. Any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
So there are many challenges that children's services are facing, particularly because we have to meet our statutory obligations, and obviously we're trying to manage a balanced budget. In particular, the Children's Social Care and Dedicated School Grant are seeing significant challenges around demand, increase in complex needs and reduced capacity placements to accommodate all the needs of our children. However, there is significant investment within children's services in focusing on providing more homes for looked after children and care leavers and delivering more school places for children with special educational needs, and we do look forward to bringing them forward in these coming years.
Thank you ever so much for that. Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. I just want to underscore the challenges that we face with demand. Excuse me. Significant financial challenges as shown in the forecasted outturn, and home to school transport is no exception. Give you a flavour of the shape of how the demand has increased. Councillor Wright and myself, Chair, appeals against non-supply of home to school transport. We traditionally have had, or historically have had, around 3 of these appeals per annum. I chaired 4 on one day last week. This has done many more. This year we're running at about 80 or 90 appeals against that demand. We are looking at innovative ways to help reduce that demand. We are being robust in the way we manage those challenges, but we are continuing to look for opportunities, drive through value for money via contract negotiations and other means. So the demand is beyond our capability. It is representing an overspend just now. We're working furiously to try and manage that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Well, we have a mover and a seconder. The recommendations are set out on pages 22 and 23 of the agenda pack. They have been moved and seconded. May I have a show of hands of all those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So now we move to agenda item 6, the Performance Indicator Report 2025-26, period 3. I would like to invite Councillor Jim Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you, Leader. The Performance Indicator Report is a working document for executive and officer colleagues day in, day out. Since vesting day in April 2021, these indicators have evolved to a very clear description of the Council's position. All credit to Tom Barden and the team around him. Our Corporate Scrutiny Committee is largely made up of new councillors, as is the Council itself. We are on a learning curve with relatively little time to become fully effective before the budget will be set for 26-27, let alone scrutinising performance for this financial year. The general feeling is that there are too many indicators, or at least too many being presented to scrutiny councillors to identify the key service areas that need valuable and dedicated scrutiny committee time. This recognises the need for management information to run the council, but we need to focus on the areas, and we've just talked about some of those, where scrutiny colleagues can add value rather than noting, inverted commas, the information presented. If, Leader, you will bear with me for a moment, and colleagues, I have an analogy relevant to this item. Those of you who know me well know that I am passionate about motor racing. We live in a county steeped in motor racing history. Your executive committee are in the 10 driving seats. To keep on track, you need data and information making your decisions. The council scrutiny committees are the team in the pit lane. And particularly, we in scrutiny are on the pit wall holding out the pit board, giving you lap by lap information, month by month, information as to your progress on the delivery of the budget. If you tried to get all those key performance indicators on one board, held out as you fly past on your journey, it would be impossible. And it's a similar analogy here. We need to know what information and scrutiny you need to have to get past the checkered flag successfully and on budget. So it's up to you in many ways to direct us. We need your clear direction as to what areas you want scrutiny to focus on in advance of your future decisions and reflecting on the success, indeed or otherwise, of your past decisions. Our next corporate scrutiny meeting is on Tuesday the 26th of August, and we would welcome your input into our agenda so that we can add value on that night. Of course, that request goes out to officer colleagues as well as the executive. It is a race. We're here in the pits. We'll hold out the boards, but we need to know your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And Adele and I do love an analogy, I must admit. It's something we quite often do. So thank you for that, Councillor Hakewell. I would now like to invite Claire Edwards, Executive Director for Finance, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for those comments, Councillor Hakewell, and hopefully what you've seen as our report in terms of combining our information in the previous agenda item, we will also be including the performance data for Q2 in answer to some of your comments there. So we will be focusing and trying to look at the core KPIs, incorporating those and linking them directly to the financial data, giving you a much more clearer indication in terms of that correlation of performance, finance, and the outcomes and projected issues that we may or may not have, and does there any synergies between one or the other. So that will be coming and is work in progress that we are looking at. And I do acknowledge that there is quite a lot of KPIs that we have here. So on that basis, I won't be going through every single appendices in the report, you'll be pleased to know. So we do have 140 KPIs that are reported for this period. We have 44, as I've just said, for the Council's core KPIs, which we will be focusing further on in Q2, and are reported on a monthly basis. We have 61 that are reported on an annually or quarterly basis, and 35 for our organisational health KPIs as well, they're reported quarterly. So what we're looking at in terms of our current position in those KPIs that we've set targets for is that 55% of those are on or exceeding the target, 19% are within tolerance, and 26% are performing below. So what we have within all our different appendices is a focus on some of those KPIs. So Appendix A shows you the core KPIs. Then we have the service KPIs in Appendix B and the organisational KPIs in Appendix C. Just referring back to the workforce information, so Appendix C does show some of that workforce data, whilst I acknowledge it is challenging in terms of our environment that we work within, but it is shown an upward trajectory in terms of that move away from agency and that reliance that we have seen in the past. But I'm sure you'll appreciate it is a significant challenge for organisations that have gone through local government reform, but we are making significant inroads into shifting to a much more permanent workforce. So the KPIs are varied in terms of their outcomes, and we are seeing some significant challenges in areas within these KPIs that are within those appendices. I won't labour on some of them, but obviously we're sort of looking at certain things around homelessness, long-term adult social care services, etc., and children's trust information. So we've got varied activities in terms of the targets that have been achieved within each of these, and I'm sure that there is significant work going on in the background with all our service area, making sure that we can maintain and improve those areas that are not quite meeting the targets, and will continue to do so through the financial year. Obviously, some of these KPIs will have a direct impact on some of our budget and financial landscape, but this is also around ensuring that we've got those services where the residents need to have them, and actually the services are being delivered as they expect it to be delivered. So I'll take pause there and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that, and I'd like now to invite member debate from the floor. Councillor Cheatley to start.
The performance report does hold a significant number of indicators that highlight the direction of travel across the whole council. And as the report shows, and as Claire's just mentioned, we do monitor performance across 140 indicators, split between core KPIs in Appendix A, if you refer to that, the service KPIs in Appendix B, and organisational KPIs in Appendix C, of which 74% are either within tolerance or they're exceeding target. So I think that does show some excellent work that is taking place to maintain standards across the council and provides a transparent reflection of areas where we still need to improve. And I do take on board Jim Hakewell's, Councillor Hakewell's comments, and I do think we need to give more feedback, as you've rightly said, to scrutiny in a timely fashion. So we're on board with that. Chair, I'm happy, therefore, to support the recommendations as set out in this report.
Thank you very much for that. Understanding areas of challenge and opportunity in our performance and how it relates to our spend is an important part of the efficiency review our officers are undertaking. I'm happy to second the report, but also like to wish to focus a little more on some of the housing indicators. I've been really impressed with the staff and team that I've met across housing. They work really hard to support our residents in our council houses, but also in supporting people who are at risk of homelessness or are homeless and need support to get back on their feet. A couple of highlights we have, MP S79, which shows 100% of emergency repairs in our council housing are completed within 24 hours. We also have AFL 17 showing that this service is managing to keep the number of households in temporary accommodation significantly lower than the upper target that is set. That said, the area is one that is demand-led. The service continue to see increased numbers of homelessness approaches this year and an increase in new people that they find rough sleeping over the last couple of months. There are many factors that lead to homelessness and rough sleeping, including relationship breakdowns, evictions, cost of living challenges, to name just a few. I know that the team are constantly exploring how they can work more preventatively, and we hope that we can start to positively impact these indicators as we have done previously. I'm delighted to second the report. Councillor Benworth.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to start by acknowledging and thanking our Director of Public Health, Communities and Leisure and her team for attending to my inquisitive mind about the KPIs, and I really have appreciated the back and forth communications that we've had. Chair, I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight some consistent progress we're making in terms of our leisure offer and in relation to our public health. In terms of public health, it's heartening to see that we are exceeding our own targets in relation to newborn visits, with 93.8% being visited within 14 days. This is also significantly higher than the national average. Similarly, 93.9% of babies received their 6 to 8 week check-in in the required time period. Performance against these indicators is something we need to have a focus on, as they are linked to that all-important period when families might need some extra support. Our rate of breastfeeding has declined very slightly in this quarter, but we are increasing support available through our Best Start in Life services. I saw this at first hand at the Kettering Family Hub, how infant feeding support services are helping women and families to start and sustain breastfeeding. It was very remarkable work, I have to say. In terms of our leisure services, we have an indicator that brings together different measures of customer satisfaction. Keeping active is so important for the health and well-being of our community, and as part of that, we need to keep a focus on having good quality offer for our residents. It's fantastic to see that both the services that we provide directly and those that we provide within our partners are exceeding our targets and the industry standard. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Harrington.
I'd like to really highlight at this point the excellent work we are making around electric recharging points across our towns in Northamptonshire. The electric vehicle strategy adopted in July 24 sets a target for public EV charge points to be available in all 12 towns across Northamptonshire by the end of 25. We're not quite there, but we're almost there. In March, a further 22 kilowatt chargers went live at Market Hill in Rothwell, leaving only Oundle and Earthenborough without publicly available recharging points. We can expect to see these progressed into those towns once the local electric vehicle infrastructure programme gets underway later this year, so we should be there by the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Harrington. Any other members? Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
Thank you, Chair. So as we look ahead to the new academic year, I'm pleased to share several positive developments in our children's services that reflect our ongoing commitment to improving outcomes for children, young people and families across Northamptonshire. So one is SEND improvement. It is our ambition to deliver a more integrated and responsive SEND system. I am pleased to report that the percentage of education, health and care plans completed within 20 weeks, including exceptions, continues to perform on target, showing significant improvement from the previous year. This is a testament to the dedication of our teams and the impact of our improvement work. I also want to say a big thank you to George O'Connell and the team for taking over and locating all the projects that had been signed off in terms of school capital buildings over the last 3 years, and I'm pleased to say that they're now most all of them are in progress. And finally, a thank you to the public health team, where we're working jointly with them on family hubs. That is a truly amazing project and will make meaningful change to all our families in North Northamptonshire.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Thank you, Chair. The Chamber will be aware of my commitment to the highways portfolio, and through my engagement with residents and fellow elected members and others, I'm aware of the interest in maintaining a safe highway network with a focus on getting fixed right first time. I have a couple of points on that. I'll make them in a second. I'm just pleased to note that we fixed 1,689 potholes in the month of June versus 1,592 the month previously. However, that doesn't paint the picture. In April this year, we had a success rate of about 72% of defects repaired on time. That rose to 93.1% in May, and in June we achieved over 95% of reported defects. It's an excellent position to be in. We're not complacent about it. We're moving at a rate of 6% per month in terms of number of defects fixed. But I continue to work with contractors around material science, and this week they have been looking at a new opportunity to help us achieve the no defect left behind intention. They have embraced that principle. And you will know that the rationale is we'll have a priority fix of 3 or 4 potholes on a street with 3 or 4 other smaller ones that are essentially left behind because safety is priority 1. They're not deemed to be unsafe, but of course it looks like we're inefficient because we don't fix them all at the same time. Contractors embrace the principle of wherever possible to leave no defect behind and deal with those defects as and when then, leading us to a place where everyone will benefit, the travelling public and others, and lead to a smoother and safer road network. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Staggering progress, and I always seem to see Councillor McGiffin either in motorcycling leathers or a high-vis jacket these days. I think he's made amazing progress. Any other members? Councillor O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. Wow, follow that, Chris. I think I can. Planning. I'm pleased to note, really, that the indicators relating to the processing and determination of planning applications are both exceeding targets, with 5 out of 5 on major applications processed on time and 71 of 79 non-major applications being processed within the required time frame, resulting in a performance rate of 93%, which is higher than the 86% target. Really, given the importance of supporting appropriate development and ensuring timely determinations of planning applications, which we're really striving to do, we're making changes to how we process the initial application, and hopefully that will make have a big impact on how quickly they're then dealt with. So we'll continue to focus those resources on maintaining these performance rates, and hopefully that will then mean that we'll continue to go up the charts. We've gone up 32 already in terms of how we are assessed on our planning, and I hope that continues to accelerate as we accentuate what we're doing with planning and how we focus, and I think that will all link in with what we do with the local plan as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and more on that later. So any other Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. The more and more I learn about my directorate, the more impressed I am at the amazing work the team are doing with very often very, very limited budgets and skeleton staffing structures. So it really want to send a big shout out to them to say, you know, well done and thank you very much. Notably, under Appendix B, the service KPIs under safe and thriving safe and thriving places. I'll try and put my teeth back in and say it again. I've noted that all KPIs are achieving target, and actually the majority of them are exceeding target levels. Notably, the number of new unauthorised encampments visited remains at 100%, and 96% of food establishments compliant with food hygiene law has gone up quarter by quarter. Other notable KPIs are the number of rogue trading activities visited, which is again remaining at 100%. The number of disabled facilities grant completions, and the percentage of local land charges within 10 working days. I think these highlight the great work that regulatory services are doing, which often goes under the radar. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Wilcox.
Yes, good morning. First of all, I'd like to also thank the communities team. They're a very well-motivated bunch, and they've shown me around quite a few places, including the libraries, for instance, and here I am pleased that we continue to see visitor numbers to our libraries increasing. Plenty of mums and tots and older generations using them as a community hub. So that's great news. On the satisfaction rate for antisocial behaviour cases, the council manages is slightly below target, which reflects the fact that we're experiencing some higher sickness rates in an already small team. A staffing restructure is underway, with an intention to increase resources supporting antisocial behaviour case management, because antisocial behaviour is just absolutely top of my list rather, and we've got to get it down. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Can I just take the opportunity to say how proud I am of every single one of this executive team, ably supported and backed by our brilliant officers and backbenchers, including those of other political parties. Well, we have the recommendations as set out on page 132 of the agenda pack. They have been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show of those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now we come to the other finance report, that is agenda item 7, the capital programme update 2025-2026. I'd like to invite Claire Edwards to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. So the Capital Update report is a regular report that comes to Executive, and it gives us the ability to be able to amend or change our capital programme through the financial year. So I want to draw your attention to the fact that we're looking to propose to increase our budget for the fact that we've been able to successfully secure funding. So the funding is around the local authority housing fund, and will give us access to £878,000, which is also an agenda item further on for committee to consider. What it does do, it allows us to, whilst not only delivering the required services that we have to provide in terms of temporary accommodation, it gives us additional funding to ensure that we can have access to housing on a longer term basis to obviously support our residents, particularly in the general fund, and also benefiting our social housing as well in the HRA. So this is really positive news in terms of helping to provide funding for the local authority, and obviously defers using our own resources to fund some of these activities. So there are other changes also noted within the report for moving capital programmes around that have already been discussed, but essentially gives us the opportunity to bring these to you today to consider and note. So other than that, I'm happy to take any questions or recommend the recommendations as set out in 3.1.
Thank you for that. I'd like to now invite members to debate from the floor. Councillor Cheatley.
Yeah, the capital approval process allows the council to respond to and adapt its capital programme to risks and opportunities during the year. This may be in the form of additional grant funding or delivery of urgent works. The council has significantly benefited in accessing funding to support housing needs through the Local Authority Housing Fund, £878,000 there. This has already delivered an additional 41 properties into the council for use across social housing and temporary accommodation. Also, the council continues to develop and deliver much needed school placements, and the capital programme needs to be able to respond to these changes. Chair, therefore, I'm happy to support the recommendations as set out in this report.
Thank you very much. Any other members? Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
I'm delighted to second this report in continuing to deliver school capital works to facilitate school places and support special educational needs in schools for our children. It is key that school places for SEND provision is delivered for our children to ensure that they are able to access and receive the education that they deserve in the area that they live.
Thank you very much for that. Well, the items have been moved and seconded. The recommendations are set out on page 170 of the agenda pack. Please may I have a show of hands for those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So now we move on to agenda item 8, the supported living services for individuals with a learning disability. I would like to invite Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting. Lynn, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak on this item. One thing that worries me with any outsourced service is the safeguarding, and it is so in this case. And I know that the report says we have a reliance on the market, or the market should define. But in most of the markets that I know, the housing market, the care market, there's a lot of crisis going on, and demand-led services are going up in such a way that I wonder about how we are making sure that vulnerable people are safeguarded through the market. We've had lots of instances where the market has failed vulnerable people, and just need to make sure that we have those safeguarding. I recognise 7.7 in this on the risks, but it doesn't say about that safeguarding for our vulnerable people. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I would now like to invite David Watts, Executive Director of Adults, Health, Partnerships and Housing, to introduce the report. David.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lynn, for your comments. I will try and address them at the end of my presentation. So whilst the report is quite technical in nature, I'll try and provide a brief summary of the pertinent points. Approval to extend the current framework contract for learning disability services, a framework called Commissioning for a Good Life, for a further 5-year period was given in April 2024. It was agreed on the basis that elements of the framework would be recommissioned during the extension period to allow, where appropriate, for standalone contracts or alternative frameworks to be implemented. This report seeks support and permission for a new approach to commission supported living services for people with learning disabilities that receive care and support in their own homes, either individually or in shared properties. Providers will offer 24/7 support, including personal and complex care, and that support is regulated by the Care Quality Commission, which is one of the safeguards which is in place. The paper requests delegated authority to start a procurement process and award a 4-year contract with the potential for 2-year extensions. The current approach, which uses a complex pricing methodology, is considered inefficient and costly, with the Council benchmarking higher for expenditure in this area. The proposed approach will replace the previously used tiering system and will use an hourly rate for care and support, allowing better cost control and oversight whilst continuing to promote independence. The aim is for there still to be a strong focus on delivering outcomes for people that use those services. The Integrated Care Board will also be able to purchase care and support through the framework, and this will help to foster integrated working, cost consistency, and help us in our market management as well. The new approach is expected to reduce spending by around 2% and achieve further savings over the contract's life. The total anticipated expenditure of the contract over the significant number of years that we'll be commissioning is £172 million. That's already built into our medium-term financial plan and the budget for the next year. The contract is essential for fulfilling statutory functions under the Care Act. With regards to making sure that the quality of care that we commission from the independent sector, we have a provider safeguarding team and a provider quality team which works in our commissioning function within the Council. We work closely with the Care Quality Commission to monitor the quality of care as well, using soft intelligence around the providers as well about change of ownership. And we also have the ability through Health Watch that provides visits in to check user experience of those services as well. So there's a number of different safeguards that enable us to monitor and oversee the quality of those providers. Happy to take any questions, but pass back to you, Chair.
Thank you ever so much for that. I now open it to the floor. Members wish to make any contribution? Councillor Bennyworth.
Chair, I'd like to move this report on behalf of the Executive Member of Adults and Health Partnerships, Councillor Eddie MacDonald. The previous administration agreed to the extension referenced in the content of the report in April 2024, subject to the commissioning service reviewing and retendering various lots. This paper brings forward a significant priority area for retendering of supported living services for people with a learning disability. This was identified as a priority area due to some of the complexities of the current framework being burdensome to administer. At times it was confusing and limited the opportunity to deliver greater efficiencies. I'm supportive of anything that removes complexity for our residents and where it's also likely to enable a greater focus on delivering efficient use of public money. I'm therefore delighted to move this report on Councillor MacDonald's behalf and propose that the Executive approve the recommendations at paragraph 3.1 for the reasons set out in 3.2.
Thank you very much for that. And I would be happy to second the report. The area of adult social care is complex, and as you can see from this report, there are significant spends on vital statutory services over the medium term for this council. Any commissioning activity that simplifies our approach but creates the conditions for efficiencies to be delivered with public money is a good thing in my book. If it enables people to keep living great lives in Northamptonshire whilst we do this, then that can only be a win-win scenario. That 2% is vital to the sustainability of this council. But I also agree that safeguarding of vulnerable individuals is an utmost priority. Any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Cheatley.
Yeah, there's been some really good points made today. I wanted to point out that this work is hugely important in helping the Adults, Health Partnerships and Housing Directorate to try to manage the increased demand and complexity that is seen across the country in this particular area. I'm therefore fully in support of this commissioning activity.
Thank you ever so much for that. Any other members? Well, we have a mover and a seconder. The recommendations are set out on page 178 of the agenda pack. Please may I have a show of those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, David.
Bear with me, Chair. I'll just go and get Councillor Wright.
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you for that. Right, we come to agenda item 9, the transformation of the specialist support service for younger adults and the new in-house enablement service. I would like to invite David Watts, Executive Director for Adults, Health Partnerships and Housing, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. In 2022, the previous administration agreed a strategy for transforming in-house provider services, which included 4 phases of review and action. Phase 1 involved the closure of Beach Close, review of job descriptions, and the proposed taking over of Thackley Green. All of these have been completed successfully, with improved outcomes for people that use the services, improved working conditions for staff, whilst also supporting financial efficiencies through supporting more people to remain or become more independent. Phases 2 and 3 focused on reviewing Pine Lodge, the specialist support for younger adult service, and day services. The vision for these services is to promote independence through reablement or enablement and not compete with the external market where it can provide better or more cost-effective support of the same or better quality. These services are predominantly to the benefit of working age adults, and it mirrors the approach that has been successfully delivered for older adults in phase 1 of the transformation programme. The paper recommends commissioning out the longer-term support provided by the specialist support service for younger adults to the external market. It affects around 53 members of staff who would receive employment protections under TUPE regulations. The community support elements provided by Specialist Support Service would be commissioned individually, and the remaining 46 staff would be part of a remodelled enablement service that would be run by the local authority. The changes are projected to save just under £1 million over the medium-term financial plan period and avoid a current budget deficit of just over £300,000. The enablement service is expected to deliver much greater additional savings of 1.4 million, resulting in a cumulative impact of 2.4 million in savings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. I would now like to invite members to debate this from the floor. Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
I'm delighted to move this report on behalf of the Executive Member for Adults and Health Partnerships, Councillor Eddie MacDonald. When I became Councillor and Executive Member, it was on the back of my belief that we need to challenge and support our public services to innovate, transform and move with the times. The previous administration approved an adult social care provider services transformation strategy and case for change at its meeting in October 2022. This report brings forward an important part of phase 2 of this strategy. It also demonstrates how our officers are working tirelessly to explore new ways of working to meet the changing needs of our residents. Can I therefore move this report on Councillor MacDonald's behalf and propose that the Executive approve the recommendations at paragraph 3.1 for the reasons set out at 3.2?
You can indeed. Any other members wish to? Councillor Harrison.
Thank you again, Chair. I know from Councillor MacDonald that he's impressed with the values and skills of the staff within the Directorate. But this proposal is a real opportunity to support staff with some of the more challenging aspects of their role, while at the same time enabling the wider market to deliver elements of support that they're best placed to achieve. So I also understand that a lot of work's been done to minimise the impact on people accessing the services, and that will be carefully managed. So that will include obviously the continuity in support arrangements, but also the continuity of employment for staff. That's either within the council or with TUPE protections should they transfer to an external care provider. So I'm therefore very pleased to second this report.
Thank you very much for that. Well, there's a trend this morning, isn't there? And that's improvement, transformation and delivering efficiencies. The recommendations are set out on page 195 of the agenda pack. They have been moved and seconded. May I have a show of those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now we come to agenda item 10, the bunker fuel procurement. I would like to invite George Candler, Executive Director for Place and Economy, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is the first of two reports being presented this morning to the Executive on permission to go out for tendering purposes. The main thrust of this report that you have in front of you is for permission to seek the tender process to commence for the supply of fuel for our large bulk tanks that we've got in our depots in Kettering and Wellingborough. And the fuel within these tanks is used to service our council fleet, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. At the moment, our current contractual arrangements for purchasing bulk fuel expires on the 31st of August this year, 2025, although we have an extension in place through to the 28th of February 2026. And this report is recommending undertaking the procurement exercise, utilising a framework to ensure that we're able to purchase our bulk diesel, our hydro-treated vegetable oil, abbreviated to HVO, and petrol at favourable rates within the contract procedure rules. It's also important to note that our bunker fuel is a key requirement of our wider business continuity, should we need to enact that in any emergency, for the continuity of our services at key sites, should there be any catastrophic failure of electrical outage through the national grid. So going into a little bit more detail, we have 3 bulk fuel tanks, one in Robinson Way in Kettering and 3 in Wellingborough. And as I've said, these tanks hold fuel and they're key for those frontline services. So in particular, our waste and recycling collection that we see day in, day out across our households across Northamptonshire, our street cleansing services, grounds maintenance, but also in the housing area around housing maintenance teams and the warden services. You'll note that the report highlights how this will work operationally in section 4.3 and 4.4, and I've already touched on the contract expiry date and our progress in terms of procurement and next steps. In section 5, you'll see that a number of options were considered around the procurement exercise, and following due consideration of those, the preferred option is option 3, to procure fuel via an established framework agreement. You'll see the benefits are highlighted of that particular option in 5.3 of the report. And in terms of next steps, subject to approval this morning, officers will engage the procurement team and legal services to identify the suitable framework and ensure that we achieve best value and most advantageous compliant procurement process is undertaken. The cost you'll see is detailed in 7.1, so the expected value of this contract is just over 1.6 million. And there may be some fluctuation around that, reflecting some of the economic fluctuations we sometimes experience worldwide with regards to fuel prices. So, Chair, that summarises the report. The recommendations are listed in section 3.1 of the report for your consideration for the reasons at 3.2. Thank you.
Thank you for that, George. I'd now like to invite member debate from the floor. Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move this actually, and I'd like to say that I really understand this very much. I spent 41 years in the motor industry, in the motor-related industry, so I know the importance of maintaining the provision of fuel for running the council's various fleet vehicles is vitally important. Additionally, the bunkered fuel is a requirement of the council's emergency plan for the continuity of services at key sites, accounting for any catastrophic, I'll say that again, any catastrophic failure of the national electric grid, which has been known. And we saw how such an occurrence can have on day-to-day services with the outage in the Iberian Peninsula at the end of April this year and the impact that caused. I'm very pleased to recommend that we go ahead with the procurement of a supply contract to ensure uninterrupted provision of fuel for our vehicles across Northamptonshire.
Thank you ever so much for that. Any other members? Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Thank you again, Chair. I'd like to second this, and just to underscore the fact that surety of fuel provision is crucial for the Council's operation. 4 tanks hold fuel for our vehicles and equipment that help support many of our frontline services, including waste and recycling collection, street cleansing, grounds maintenance, housing maintenance and warden services, etc. Services that would not be able to operate without it. It should also be noted by making purchases of bulk diesel, HVO and petrol at favourable rates is key for maintaining good fiscal control as well as ensuring operational resilience. I'd like to second as stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that has been proposed by Councillor Harrington and seconded by Councillor McGiffin. The recommendations are set out on page 212 of the agenda pack. May I have a show of those in favour?
That is unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So now we move to agenda item 11, and that's the Procurement of Compliance Contractor 2025 to 2028. Lynn is no longer with us, so I'd now like to invite George Candler, the Executive Director for Place and Economy, to introduce the report. George.
Thank you, Chair. So the second of two reports requesting permission to go out for tender. So as you'll see in the report, the Council is responsible for all statutory compliance for our 92 council-owned buildings of varying use, including Corby Cube that we're in this morning. And those various tests, 46 in total, also include inspections and risk assessments, and they all have to be completed by competent contractors with the relevant expertise in their respective areas. You'll also note in the report that there are a range of planned preventative maintenance, for example, such as water hygiene maintenance, that also falls within this procurement activity, and ultimately it's to ensure that our buildings are safe and legal for those colleagues that work within it, but also of equal importance, any visitors that we have in our buildings across our building stock. At the moment, our procurement of compliance works is fragmented. It takes place across a number of contracts and a number of different procurements that have been undertaken. And therefore it's proposed that the Council move to a more integrated and consistent approach with a single contract to provide these services based on individual procurements. And ultimately, whilst this will ensure consistency in compliant buildings, it also provides an opportunity to reduce that fragmentation that I was referring to, both in procurement and delivery, and therefore resulting in further efficiencies back into the organisation. You'll note that proposals will be sought from both an established framework agreement and the open market, depending on requirements. And crucially, this allows the Council to open up the opportunity for a number of these contracts for businesses of a small and medium size, where their expertise and local knowledge is key to enable us to ensure that we have safe and legal buildings. Turning to a little more detail, you'll see that the headline options that were explored are detailed in 5.5 of the report, and also the advantages are highlighted in 5.8 of the route that we're proposing to take. But notwithstanding, there are some potential downsides, which again, for full transparency, we've highlighted in 5.9 of the report. However, we don't believe these outweigh the benefits highlighted in 5.8, hence coming to the proposed recommendation. So under 6.1, you'll see that the next steps are detailed, including progressing the documentation, identifying the preferred supplier through a blend of framework options and the open market tender that I was referring to earlier, before awarding the contract to the successful bidder or bidders. The financial impact is articulated in 7.1.2 of the report, and therefore, Chair, I draw your attention to the recommendations at section 3.1 of the report for the reasons at 3.2. Thank you.
Thank you for that, George. I'd like to now invite member debate from the floor. Please may I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations in the report. Councillor Harrington.
I'd like to move the report. There is, at the moment, a difference, vast difference, of service standards, cost processes and delivery arrangements in place for statutory compliance, such as testing, monitoring of areas such as electrical, gas and water across the Council. These include 42 different tests, inspections or risk assessments across 92 buildings. All of these are completed by competent contractors with expertise in each respective area. Streamlining these, as this report is recommending, will ensure that all appointments are pre-scheduled, allowing capacity for rigorous contract management. It is my pleasure, therefore, to recommend that we progress with the procurement of a compliance contractor.
Thank you very much for that. Can we have Councillor Chris McGiffin?
Thank you, Chair. Me again. I'd like to second this proposal because I believe that this is an extremely important piece of work to provide the most cost-effective and efficient solution. As has been heard, and apologies for going over points made by both Councillor Harrington and by George, to ensure our buildings are safe and compliant is a crucial responsibility as a landlord. On top of the 42 tests is a regime of planned preventative maintenance, such as water hygiene, Legionnaires, and electrical testing, sometimes known as PAT testing, amongst the 42. This ensures all buildings are safe and legal. But I'd also like to draw the Executive's attention to the way that we will procure these works. Proposals will be sought from both established framework agreements and the open market, dependent upon requirements. Crucially, this allows the Council to open up the opportunity to a wider selection of suppliers, including Northamptonshire-based small and medium enterprises where expertise and local knowledge is required. This also ensures our own contracts are supporting the local economy wherever possible, and I second the report on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are determined to provide a safe, compliant and modern working environment for our amazing staff. I think it's absolutely important. Well, the recommendations are set out on page 221 of the agenda pack. They have been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show of those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, David. So now we move on to agenda item 12, the Local Authority Housing Fund, LAHF 3. I would now like to invite David Watts to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Last report from me for today. So Local Authority Housing Fund Round 3. I'll refer to it as LAHF 3 from now on because it's a bit of a mouthful, if that's okay. The report recommends and seeks approval to accept grant funding and note the proposed capital expenditure referred to in the capital report earlier to purchase properties and appoint contractors for refurbishment using grant funding from central government that is match funded from local authority capital funds. The aim is to help mitigate some homelessness and temporary accommodation demand by increasing council-owned temporary housing, with grant conditions requiring one property to be used for providing stable accommodation for an Afghan family as part of the Afghan resettlement programme. Ultimately, this enables the council to increase its housing stock at a reduced cost compared to market value due to the LAHF 3 grant. Alternative options include returning the funding, which would not address homelessness challenges, and legislation still requires the council to meet need, whether it accepts the funding or not. Therefore, it would not make economic sense not to accept the funding. LAHF 3 provides £450 million nationally to deliver temporary accommodation for homeless families and secure housing for the Afghan resettlement programme. The Council has successfully participated in the previous rounds, delivering additional homes using grant and capital match funding, with over 40 properties being acquired that way. LAHF 3 offers just over £500,000 to Northamptonshire Council to purchase 4 homes with no minimum capital matching required. Objectives include reducing housing pressures, temporary accommodation costs and supporting local housing markets. The Council must deliver 4 properties, including 1 new build, with rents capped at local housing allowance rates. Refurbishment works will be contracted out to ensure timely completion of the properties. The grant funding will enable the council to only commit its own capital funding of around 40%, leading to a significant financial benefit to the council with a greater asset value and much needed houses to support with managing need locally. The Council's Strategic Capital Board approved funding for the project, and the Procurement Act 2023 exempts contracts for land and building acquisitions. The Council aims to purchase properties on a freehold basis and merge leaseholds into freeholds. The LAHF3 proposal supports statutory homelessness duties and also aligns with the Council's corporate plan priorities. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll now open it up to debate. I'll kick off. So LAHF3 is a very complex area where national policies that are set out that all areas in the UK will support asylum dispersal. However, with that comes significant grant-funded opportunities that can be used for significant property acquisition that benefit residents of North Northamptonshire with new homes or temporary accommodation. With central government grant funding covering around 60% of purchase costs, this brings valuable assets into the council to be used for housing. If the council were not to accept funding through LAHF, there would still be expectations that all areas are asylum dispersal areas. We must be pragmatic about not refusing grant funding and understand that the benefits achieved for our residents are significant, and therefore I'm happy to move this report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ken Harrington.
Yes, Chair. I would like to second this report. To be an efficient and well-run council, we have to make sure that we maximise grant funding. This fund helps us work towards addressing our policy priorities, including providing valuable homes and building great communities in North Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Well, we have a mover and a seconder. The recommendations are set out on page 232 and 233 of the agenda pack. Do I have a show of hands? All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, members. So we move on to agenda item 13, the Local Plan Advisory Group. We have a speaker on this. I would like to invite Councillor David Brackenbury, and thanks for his patience for attending the meeting. To address the meeting, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you very much, Chair, and congratulations to you all on your 100 days. Right, well, this is a bit of cross-party approval. I very, very much welcome this report. You will remember, Chair, that years ago a number of us were members of the North Northamptonshire Joint Planning Committee, which did really great work back in the day and formulated the Joint Core Strategy, which is the overarching Part 1 planning policy document that is still extant. Subsequently, North Northamptonshire Council, when it was formed, had a specific executive advisory panel which carried out the function of member engagement in the formulation and development of planning policy. And when the administration changed and the EAPs were about to be taken away, I contacted the leader and other colleagues, Mr. Candler and his team, to insist the importance of having member engagement and participation in the formulation of planning policy. This is so important. We are basically setting the placemaking of North Northamptonshire going out to 2045, and it is a really important challenge, because we also have to produce a formulated and sound local plans for submission by December 2026. Sounds a long time, it really does, but it really is not. And I would like to take this opportunity, Chair, to congratulate the team led by Simon Richardson and obviously George Candler and Graham Kane superintending, who have worked so hard on developing the necessary evidence base for the local plan. And I think that is again a matter of cross-party support, because every member of the council here, we're all ward councillors. Planning is important for us all. So, Chair, I really welcome this, formulation of this body. I welcome its cross-party nature. I fully note and understand the terms of reference in that it is not of itself a decision-making body, but of course such decisions on planning policy are very much down to the planning inspectorate anyway when it comes to it. But let's work together across the parties and across any political divide to make sure that we have the best planning policy formulation and the best draft local plan ready for submission to the planning inspectorate before the cut-off date in December 2026. And so thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to invite Councillor Simon Fairhall to address the meeting. Simon, you have a maximum of 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning. Since the start of this municipal year, we've had the proposed establishment by the Democracy and Standards Committee of a Constitutional Working Group, and in this meeting today, the proposal to establish a local plan member advisory group. A working group is not subject to the provisions of the Local Government Act 72 as amended, the key elements of which I believe are not open to press, public or other members. Make-up does not have to be politically balanced. However, the proposed membership of the Constitutional Working Group was just that: Reform 3, Conservatives 1 and Greens 1. The Local Plan Member Advisory Group is equally not subject to the full provisions of Local Government Act 72, but again the proposed membership is 5 Reform, 2 Conservatives, 1 Green and 1 Labour. Included in the information before you is a statement that by basing membership on political balance principles, it will provide for a range of views to be heard. But it then goes on to also highlight group leaders will be asked to ensure there is a spread of geographic representation to ensure all broad areas of North Northamptonshire are represented, and members should ideally have an interest or background in planning, housing, infrastructure or environmental policy. I would contend that the selection of the best advisory group would reverse the order above to get the strongest membership, or to get a full range of views to extend the size of the group to cover all political groups. Of course, I speak with self-interest, in fact, in both groups. But my second point is that there is not a place for me or my Communities Alliance colleague. We're also excluded from the opportunity to observe the meetings or even see the input or the output of these groups until there is some formal paper for their parent committee. Unless I think I pursue the processes outlined in Part 5.2 Access to Information Procedure Rules, Clauses 23 and 24 of the Constitution. There is in fact no further guidance that I could find within the Constitution regarding either working groups or member advisory groups. Which brings me to my underlying point really: if we are not pre-guided by external or our own rules, can we not consider doing things differently? And by that I mean not choosing groups based on the colour of your badge, but by selecting the most suitable people for the relevant group, and or providing the opportunity for others to be involved, even if only in an observer capacity or information made available. I acknowledge with regards to all of the above that I'm new to all this, and maybe the response is, Simon, get a few more mates in with you when it comes to the council election time. But basically, I'm keen to be involved. I would just want to flag one final point, particularly relevant to the local plan, reflecting the clause within the scope and responsibilities of the member advisory group to provide a forum for early discussion of relevant cross-boundary planning issues. And that is, just across the border, the inclusion within their local plan developments of significant developments in the area to the west of Peterborough City and along the northwest corridor of the A1 in Huntingdonshire. And the very great concern as to the potential impact on local health services in particular and the roads, especially as it's the other end of the A605, the Thrapston end of which we all know very, very well and very well aware of. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and you're talking my language. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Jim Hakewell to address the meeting. Jim, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement.
Thank you, Leader. Leader and Executive, my statement here is about the opportunity to include one member of the Communities Alliance on the Local Plan Advisory Group, with the other colleague as a substitute. I would stress it's not often that an entire group attends an executive meeting, is it? The advisory group is not about politics or lack of them, but how we engage with the community and national government to decide how the future development and regeneration of the places we know and love will happen for the benefit of 370,000 residents. I personally have experience of seeing the 1995 Kettering Borough local plan through to completion and delivery. I know it doesn't look like I'm that old. I have always taken an active part in plan making, including attending the joint core strategy at Thrapston in 2016 and the Kettering Borough SSP2 public inquiry in 2021. I've often attended, Leader, planning appeals, which enables me to understand what happens at the other end of the planning process and the challenges that we can get if we don't do it right. Whilst we may only be a group of two, we will be able to share knowledge and input to help the very tight timescale for the delivery of the local plan. I hope that your executive will consider extending the membership of the advisory group to include a single member of the Communities Alliance. And thank you for listening to me this afternoon.
Thank you very much for that. I would now like to invite George Candler, Executive Director of Place and Economy, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to create a cross-party member advisory group to oversee the development of the local plan, which is already in train at the moment, as some of the speakers have already said. And it's a crucial document that shapes our place for years to come, to 2045 in this instance. So, and it essentially identifies the land that will be utilised for employment and the land that will be used for housing, and how they are connected over the next period, as I say, covering to 2045. The aim of the local plan advisory group will be consultative with elected members to support the progression of the plan through to its adoption in 2027. And the timetable for the journey of the local plan has already been to executive at its meeting on the 13th of March as part of our annual local development scheme. Turning to a little more detail on the local plan. So all councils are required to have a plan for the development in their area, and this is known as a local plan. Our current local plan, which is called the Joint Core Strategy, was adopted in July 2016 by the, at the time, very innovative Northamptonshire Joint Planning Committee, and was one of the first to be established in such a way, working across all councils in Northamptonshire. The strategy, as I've already said, provides that strategic oversight, and it is sometimes referred to as the Part 1 local plan, and then they are then supported by Part 2 local plans, and they in turn are supported by neighbourhood plans. I'm pleased to say that we're in a positive position here in Northamptonshire. We have a full suite of Part 2 local plans covering all of the former district areas, and the most recent was adopted, as you'll see in the report, under 4.3 in December 2023 with the completion of the East Northamptonshire local plan. As has already been said by some of the speakers, the advisory group will be non-decision making in its remit, but will provide crucially the opportunity to support and provide that understanding, as well as wider political ownership of the direction of travel that the local plan will be on between now and the end of 2026 when it's submitted to the Secretary of State. As has already been mentioned, it will be a cross-party group of members, and you'll see in 5.3 the proposal in terms of that makeup. We will be asking, subject to approval and any standstill period, group leaders to nominate their representatives that will sit on the advisory group. And then we are very keen to get going on this, so we would be anticipating the first meeting to be taking place in September of this year, with regular meetings throughout the remainder of 2025 and into 2026. The recommendations are outlined in 3.1 of the report for the reasons at 3.2, and I'll hand back to yourself, Chair, for any comments.
Thank you very much for that. I'll now open it up to the floor. Any members wish to contribute? Councillor O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. This is an absolutely massive undertaking, and thank you to our speakers and for your comments, appreciate them. And really thank you to Simon, George and Graham for steering this in the right direction and making sure we've got everything in place in terms of officers that can absolutely focus on what we need to deliver. I am impressed with all the work that our planning officers do, especially with the work that they've been doing with the new IT system coming in, and I think that's probably helped in terms of allowing us to then have staff that we can apply just to drive forward this local plan. And this is vital for the whole of North Northamptonshire. As part of that, we need voices from across the area to inform the plan making process. This group will enable councillors to shape the policy within the local plan and ensure that progress remains on track so they can meet the challenging timeframes set by the government in symbiosis with our communities, receiving feedback from them as residents via the public consultation, which will come early next year. I'm very much looking forward to working with this group and driving forward the creation of our local plan for the benefit of North Northamptonshire. And I do believe that we are able to deliver this. One thing that is important, as everybody's pointed out, the plan runs until 2045, and we need to make sure this plan is robust and will stand up to anything that happens within planning, because obviously this will be the benchmark for any application that comes in. Also, with this plan, we are actually incorporating the Gypsy Traveller provision, which was previously a separate local plan. So that is a good piece of work that we will be doing and take on board. So thank you to everybody that's been involved. Thank you to our planning officers who've been able to articulate the information that we need and set a process in motion, and a timetable has been conveyed that will help us to deliver this plan on time, that will help make sure that North Northamptonshire is the place to live, work and play. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that very much. And so this is a really important piece of work, and I fully support the establishment of this cross-party group to oversee and contribute to the creation of our new local plan. There will, of course, be further opportunities for all elected members and our communities to shape the plan through the consultation periods that will follow. I encourage everyone to engage with that process to ensure that we have a plan that reflects the future we want to see, and a local plan that delivers prosperity and well-being for North Northamptonshire. Now, in line with my cross-party philosophy, of course I would like to invite the Alliance, the Community Alliance Group, to join us in this vital piece of work. You'll get to know me a lot better, Simon. That's for sure. And just to let everybody know that I will be confirming the Reform UK membership of both the Local Plan Advisory Group and, equally importantly, the Planning Improvement Board by Friday of this week, and would encourage group leaders to do likewise so we can get started on these vital committees and the work that they are going to be doing. So thank you for that. The recommendations are set out on page 221 of the agenda pack. Jan has moved the recommendation. I'm happy to second it. Can we have a show of hands, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Urgent items of business. I can confirm that I have received no requests to consider any urgent items of business. That concludes the business on the agenda. I would like to thank all those members, officers and the public who have been in attendance, including those who have watched online via YouTube channel. I now declare this meeting closed, and stay cool for the rest of the day. Thank you.